Welcome back to another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. Today we're on episode 24, From Combat to the C-Suite, Leadership Insights, again with Mike Kenzie. So if you listen to episode 22 on Working Genius, we dug into the Working Genius assessment, learned a little bit more about that tool and how it can be used for individuals or organizations. Mike is back again to chat with us today, but a completely different topic. So, Mike, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation again. Thanks for being here a second time.
Yes, thank you for having me back.
So they didn't learn everything about you last time. There were a couple of things we didn't talk much about. So because we're going to be discussing today kind of your journey in leadership from those principles that you were taught through the military and through that experience to now as the CEO of a financial institution, the two very different environments, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit, but can you tell us about your journey to the Army? What drew you, what that experience was like for you. And then we're going to kind of shift into how we first met, because I think that will be fun as the in-between then and today.
Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Well, how I got into the military, I did things a little backwards. So once I graduated high school, I went into college. I got my bachelor's degree. I also went and got my master's degree, and I've been working since I was 12 years old, been in the corporate environment since I was 19, and I've always had a job. And back when I was 29, so I'd been out of college for a number of years, working in corporate environment, doing consulting, and started to get a little burned out. At the time, I was married. Marriage wasn't going so well. We decided to get a divorce, and going into the military was something that I had always wanted to do, but never did. And I figured if I don't do it now, it's something that I'm not going to be able to do because I'll be getting too old. I think 32, 33 was the cutoff at that point, and I was 29. And I figured, why not now?
Yeah.
And that way I don't have that regret for the rest of my life. So I went and joined the Army and went to the recruiter and said, I don't want to do anything with my degrees. I just, I want to go infantry, which is what I did. And he said, well, do you want to go in with a Ranger contract? And I said, sure, what's that? And so he explained a little bit about the Rangers and what they do. And I said, that sounds good. Sign me up. And
all right, pause right there because I need you to explain. There are people that don't know.
Okay.
What does a Ranger do?
So Ranger, they're infantry, but it's a little bit different unit. They're part of the Special Operations unit in the Army. And so they're a more structured unit. They're more high speed, as folks will call it. They're the more elite infantry in the Army.
Okay, yeah. Continue. Sorry, but I'm sure that there are plenty of people listening that didn't know, just like you didn't.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I forget that at times. So, yeah, and went to the recruiter, did the whole thing, and signed up, and then told my parents and said, "Oh, getting a divorce, and by the way, I'm going into the military."
Oh my, I can't even imagine that conversation.
That was quite a shocker for them, but it's something that I wouldn't change for the world. It was such a great experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you said you were in for how long?
I was in for 4 years.
All right. And thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. My honor.
So we're going to talk about some of the things that you learned about leadership while there. And kind of compare that to where you are today and the insights that you have based on being the CEO of Bronco Federal Credit Union. We're also going to compare what you've learned from the military with the principles shared by John Maxwell. And I wanted to share with folks how we first met and what we have in common there so that we can really do kind of a side-by-side comparison of military, John Maxwell principles, other things you've learned, and who you are as a leader today. What did you bring along with you from the military that you still implement today? What are things you had to leave behind and that's not appropriate in the environment you find yourself in? And same with the others. So that's where we're headed, if you're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so just so it's easier to do the side-by-side comparison, let's bring them up to speed on the John Maxwell part and how we first met. And I will add to the story, but I'd like to hear you tell the story.
Okay.
Okay.
Of how we met.
Yes,
is that right?
How we met.
Sure. Well, we were at what they call IMC. Right? This is just the semi-annual conference that you can go to either get certified to be a coach, trainer, speaker, or you just go there, you're already certified, you're just going to kind of get back in the environment, get motivated again, get reinvigorated. And that's, I'd already been certified, and I think you were as well.
I was as well.
So you're in that environment, and there's about 3,000 people at the Marriott World Center in Orlando. Huge place. So a lot of people. And as you're going through the different sessions, there's very few breaks. Right? And I'm going to go into a little detail because it's important.
It's important.
Right? And I'm in this session like, okay, the next thing I needed to do was go get pictures with John, because that's what you do when you're there. You got to get a picture with John. And so I left the one session a little bit early, and I'm going to take a quick detour to the bathroom because the line was short. I'm good. Go to the bathroom, come out, and there's this long line. And so I walk up to where I thought was the end of the line, and one of the folks that I knew, they go, "Hey, Mike, why are you cutting in line?" I said, "Well, this is the end." They're like, "Oh, no, it's way, way down." And in this line, there's probably 400 people in this line,
weaving
right?
through the hallways, in and out.
Yes. And so so I go to the end of the line, and I'm standing there for a few seconds, and then this young lady walks up next to me, and you do what you normally do when you're in those environments. You turn to them and you say, "Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do?" All that stuff. And you had mentioned that you were, I believe, in either Northern Virginia, or you said Winchester. I'm like, "Oh, well, that's close to me." And then you said, "But you live in Pennsylvania." And when you said that, geographically, I knew about where you were going to be in Pennsylvania, because commuting, there's only so much you can cover in an hour and a half commute. And so I said, "Well, what town?" And you're like, "Oh, this little town you probably don't know, Greencastle," which was the town I was living in at the time. I'm like, "Wait a minute." This is not possible. Thousands of people here, and we were probably the only two from Greencastle, and just that moment of opportunity where we, met, it very, very slim odds there.
Yes.
If I had not gone to the bathroom, if I had not gone to the wrong, if all that stuff didn't happen, we would not be standing next to each other, and more than likely would not have met.
Yeah. It's crazy. So a couple of other details that kind of cracked me up in it. At first, you asked me, and I said I was from Virginia because in my mind I was thinking about where I was originally born and all of that, right? But then once you said that you were from Pennsylvania, I was like, "No, but I'm from Pennsylvania too." And you're like, "I thought you were from Virginia." And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of from both." And that kind of led into the conversation. So that was funny. But, you wanted to get to know the person you were going to stand in line for forever, right? But the other funny part about that story is that I don't know what was wrong with me, but remember how I went on this trip and I didn't even know who was picking me up from the airport, how I was getting home?
Yes.
Okay, knowing me today, how weird was that?
Right. Well, that's just weird, and that's just weird in general. For anybody to leave, like, I have no idea how I'm getting back home.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's not like I took a car to the airport. I got dropped off and I was like, well, someone's going to come pick me up, I guess. I'll figure it out. I'm not a I'll figure it out kind of person. All right. So I think that's another reason it was meant to be, because I was forced to be a like just flat by the seat of your pants person for that moment. So this is what I think is even funnier is we ended up hanging out the entire conference. We went to meals together, right? We just hung out the entire time. And you were probably tired of me very quickly, but you were stuck. And then it came time to go back. And I said what flight I was going to be on. And, you were on the same flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I don't have a way to get home. And you had parked your truck.
Yep.
And it was in the lot all of that time. And you offered to take me home. So I texted my mom. And I was like, oh, Mom, don't worry. I figured out a way to get home. And she said, how? And I said, this guy that I met at the conference. And she was about to lose her mind. I think it was all caps and everything. Like, have you lost your mind? You're going to get in the vehicle with a random person. I was like, but you don't understand. Maxwell people are different. Right. So he's certified Maxwell. Like, I can trust him. I know I'm in good hands, right? So that was hilarious. So thank you for giving me a ride home.
Anytime, yeah.
You were obviously very trustworthy. And now, how long ago was that?
Was it 3 years ago?
I think so. I think it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, because it was after COVID, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't think we were wearing masks.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so 3 years ago. And since then, we stay in contact. We had a period of time we were really good at going to breakfast at least, once a month and, always sharing where we are in our journey. And you listen to me a lot more than I listen to you, I think. But it's been really cool. So anyway, all of that to say, he and I are both Maxwell certified. We had a really cool story of how we met. And here we are today. He's on my podcast. I just think it's so cool. So let's share now with a comparison of military to John Maxwell's principles and kind of as you entered the world of business post-military, because I remember you saying you were corporate the whole time, right? So you'd been there before, then you went into the military, and now you're back into the corporate world. Let's talk about that transition. There's so many different directions we can take it in, but talk about that transition, some of the principles learned in each, and where maybe there's overlap.
Okay. Yeah. And you kind of have to set the stage with leadership and think about in the military, they're seeing a lot of different people come through. Mm-hmm. There's some folks that's what their family does. They've always been in the military and therefore I need to go in the military as well because that's just what we do. Right. There's some folks like me that most of my family was not in the military. My grandfather was, but that's it. And I just decided, hey, one day I'm gonna join the military. And then you have some folks that they're given a choice. You either go in the military or you go to jail. So it's such a wide range of people that are going through boot camp in the military. And one of the things they have to do really is break the people down. That's why when you go into boot camp, everybody gets their head shaved. Doesn't matter, what your background is, what your color is, your race, anything, you all get your head shaved. Mm-hmm. You all dress the same. It does not matter. They have to do that, and then they start building you back up. But everybody has to be treated the same. Mm-hmm. So
when you say it like breaking you down, I mean, it just sounds terrible.
Yeah, I mean, there's things you do in the that there's no way you would ever be able to do in a corporate environment, right? You just can't make them do push-ups until you puke. That's just not allowed.
Yeah,
you'd probably get into a little bit of trouble if you did that.
I would say so. So you're not doing that now at the
no, not yet. I've got to. Lawyers won't let me do it. So. No.
Okay. So what were some of the things that you did learn from the military that you have carried over?
Yeah, the big thing was around discipline and was around the structure that they have. They have an acronym. It's leadership. So their values in the Army are loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Those are the things that the Army has said, these are our values that we're going to have. And they all translate into the corporate world. It's how you implement those, it's how you instill those that's different.
Right.
Because you can't make people exercise until they puke in the corporate environment. Not without lawsuits anyway. So so that's really important. And I think the discipline is huge, because there's not many successful people that don't have an extraordinary amount of discipline. It just takes a lot of doing the same thing over and over again, consistently improving in order to become successful. It's not changing your routine every month or 6 months or a year even. You just have to have that discipline. So that to me is huge. Things like integrity are huge as well to me personally. If you don't have integrity, I can't trust you. If I can't trust you, it's hard for me to work with you.
No, that's a really good point. So you said discipline and structure. So I want to, beyond, leading an organization and talking about discipline and structure, let's just talk about in your life as an individual, what it looks like to live out those values of discipline and having clear structure or integrity today. What does that look like to still continue living those out?
Yeah, it's around identifying, for me, what's the schedule going to be on a consistent basis. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean you're going to do this every single day without fail, because things are going to happen, things are going to come up that you can't control, and therefore you can't necessarily stick to your schedule. For me, it's about getting up early, and that's the time where I can then start to, it's my me time. The time that I have, the kids aren't up, the wife's not up yet. And so there's no distractions. I can focus. And that's where I spend time learning about leadership, learning about business, those kinds of things. So I do the reading. And then after that, then I'll spend time exercising, depending on the day, running or lifting weights or just doing cardio type stuff. And then by that time, it's time to start getting ready for work and going to the work. And I try not to change my schedule from the weekday to the weekend. So getting up early, whether that's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it just somewhat depends. But I try and get up at 4 in the morning every morning, even on Saturdays and Sundays, because I still read Saturday and Sundays. I still work out. I usually try and get about 6 days a week in. Saturdays are the days that I don't work out usually. But again, that can shift or adjust depending on what's going on with work, what's going on with family, what's going on with me personally.
Right. So that makes sense. Now let's talk about how you carry that over to leading an organization, right? And creating that structure. How have you been able to do that in the past and even today, creating that structure that's necessary for everyone to be successful and consistent?
Yeah, what I think is important about having that structure, consistency, discipline is creating something that lives beyond you, something that is not reliant on me being there in order for something to happen. So, because if I get hit by a bus one day, the structure that you put in place can continue on beyond you. And I think that's really important for the succession of any organization. No matter what position you're in, you should have some of that structure, some of that discipline. So making sure that the staff understands, what is that structure look like, and how do we implement those things together as a team, so that if one person is not there, the other folks can pitch in and help continue on with that structure.
That makes sense. So, on the discipline piece, there's two different ways to look at discipline. There's the discipline of what you're talking about, but discipline if someone's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Obviously, very, very different in the corporate world. Like, what's your view on discipline in the corporate world when there are actual consequences for behavior?
Yeah, I think that you need to be very clear with people. We've gotten to the point nowadays, it seems like, that folks don't want to directly address issues. They don't want to hurt feelings. And I understand that, but if you approach it from a different angle, an angle of, I care about you, I care about your success, and there are things getting in the way of your success. Let me tell you what those things are. That's a very different way to have that conversation. And it also opens the person up to receive that feedback, to say, okay, he's not telling me this because he's a jerk or he's just mad that day.
Yeah.
He's telling me because he cares about me, because he wants me to be successful. So I'm going to listen, and I'm going to try and really take in what's being said.
Yeah. No, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Now, would you say that that was your view of discipline prior to going into the military? Did that already exist in you, where you would come alongside someone and share, this is, because I care about you,
Right.
or because I'm pretending to care about you, Mike?
Right. I'm kind of thinking through that. I don't think it was. And if it was, it wasn't genuine.
Okay.
And it wasn't actually until, gosh, probably 10 years ago, and I forget who it was, had kind of put it into that perspective of, it's because I care about you. It might have been Simon Sinek, if I'm not mistaken, but that helped me understand, yeah, that is the perspective that I'm trying to come from now. Wasn't always, but it is now. And I just didn't have a good way to broach that with the person, to say, this is the feedback I want to give you. I would just go into the feedback, and a lot of times they wouldn't be receptive to it. It wouldn't be successful.
Right.
If you approach it from, hey, I care about you and your success, that does open them up, and there is more chance that they're going to listen and make the changes they need to truly be successful.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like I wasn't picking on you. I know in episode 22, if you guys listened to that one, we were joking about how maybe he used to check in on people and wasn't very authentic when,
Yes.
communicating with them before. But I am curious about the part where you said you were kind of broken down in the military, then built back up. What does building back up look like in the military?
Well, they build you back up the same, right? They break you down so that you are, I'll say, at your weakest point, right? They get everybody to the breaking point. And, especially when you get to going through the Ranger indoctrination program, where you're trying to become one of the Rangers, that is their main goal, is to get you to quit. And that's why in our class, there was about 100 people that started, and 22 graduated.
Wow.
And there was one person that medically couldn't continue. Everybody else quit. So
Wow.
yeah.
That blows my mind. Wow. You didn't quit, Mike.
No, I did
Good
not.
job.
I'm not a quitter.
Not a quitter. Okay, so they got you to your weakest point, and now in reverse, how do they build you back up?
Really, it's bringing you together as a team, building you back up as a team. And the folks that you see through boot camp, you're probably never going to see again in your military career. Sometimes you might, but it's rare, because they have different specialties. You get stationed in different areas. Some folks that we went through boot camp with, a lot of them got stationed in Hawaii. I was never fortunate enough to be stationed in Hawaii. I was in Georgia, a little bit different. But so those folks I never saw again. but it's how do you come together as a team? And it's putting you under stress and working together as a team. And that builds that relationship, that bond between folks. And then you start seeing, oh, this actually does work, to put people under a stressful situation, and see how can they overcome this together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So that would directly carry over to, it's not every man for himself in the corporate world either, right?
Right.
We need to work as a team and collaborate and, look at what our strengths are and how we can pull them together to accomplish the vision. So let's just not break them down first.
Right. Yeah, but it's it's the old saying of, I'm glad that the hole is on the other side of the boat.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And if the ship is sinking, we're all sinking. Same as the, rising tide lifts all boats. It's very, very similar. It's not us and them. We are in this together within the organization.
So when you first go into boot camp, obviously, as you're mentioning, you're really going through the training at that point. But did you reach a point where then you were training others and you were leading others where you had to turn around and implement what you just learned?
Yeah, throughout. So you do get those opportunities. They put you into those leadership roles through boot camp, and see how you do.
Okay.
To put you under that pressure, to put you under that test. And I remember one person, and he was not a very good follower, but he was actually a really good leader. The problem is, because he wasn't a good follower, nobody would follow him.
Interesting.
And even though, right, his leadership skills were really good, he was not successful in what he was doing there, because he couldn't follow folks when it was his turn to follow.
Yeah. What's the lesson in that?
You've got to be able to do both, right? You've got to be able to follow when it's your turn to follow, whatever that means, and then also be a good leader.
Yeah. And I feel like the best of leaders are right alongside everyone, right? You wouldn't know that they're necessarily the leader.
Right.
So that makes complete sense. Okay, so you listed out the acronym for leadership. Is there one specific value that you find to be the most important to you, resonate the most with you?
To me, it's the integrity.
Okay.
If you do not have integrity, then that is, again, I can't trust you, and it makes it very hard for me to work with you, because I'm not sure if you have my back. And especially in the military, you need to have the other person's back.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you like the person or not. You need to know that when shit hits the fan, that person has your back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously that carries over in life in general. That is a part of you. You are integrous. Did I just make up that word?
I think you did.
No, it's real. Integrous in all areas. And that makes sense. But now let's shift a little bit to, what year did you pursue certification through the Maxwell program?
I think that was it was 2019, because it was a year before COVID.
Okay. What led you to be interested in that?
Yeah, there was the realization, as I was kind of sitting back one day pondering, about leadership, about where do I want to go. And I realized that if I wanted to be a really good leader, I had to invest in myself. Others were not doing it for me.
Yeah.
The organizations, and this is very common in organizations, that they spend very little time, energy, and money in investing in leadership. They spend a lot of that when it comes to your technical skills. And then what happens is you're really good technically, so of course we're going to put you into a management role and you're going to be really good there.
Yeah.
But those are very different
Makes
skills.
no sense.
Right. But it is so common. It happens all the time. And I realized that I wanted to be a really good leader, and I was going to have to invest my own time, invest my own money to become that, because others just weren't willing to, and I wasn't going to let that stop me. So I took vacation time. I spent my own time to fly down to Florida and pay for the certification and do all that just so I could be a better leader for my team at work.
Yeah.
I had no intentions of doing it on the side or anything like that. It was, I just wanted to be a better leader for the folks that I led.
Yeah. I think that really stood out to me when I first met you, that a lot of people that were there were either they were doing it as a business, so they were investing in their business and the resources and tools and the certification to be able to do what they're doing, right? Or an employer maybe sent them, but you did it on your own dime. And I think, like, what a valuable resource, right? For you to come back with that skill set to be able to share with others as well. But I think that would have to stand out in an organization that someone's willing to go do that. So kudos to you. How did you even discover the Maxwell program, though?
Yeah, the great question. And when I decided that I wanted to become a better leader, I started looking around to see what programs were available. And I looked at a lot of different programs. And the one that stood out to me, obviously, was the John Maxwell one, because it was focused around servant leadership. And that really resonated with me. That style of leadership, that's who I want to be. That's who I want to be as a leader. And it's not to say that the other programs were not good programs, because I think they are, and there's a lot of value in those.
Right.
It just wasn't right for me. So it's just through a lot of internet research and spending time figuring out what options are available. And then, after talking with my wife, and she was very supportive of spending the time, spending the money.
A lot of money,
yeah.
Let me just say, put that out there. It's not cheap.
Right. To then take it and use it for the place I was working at. That was an extraordinary support for her to do that for me.
Yeah.
And so I took the plunge and did it. Wasn't sure what I was getting into at the time, because just like with all the things, there's so much information. It's hard to know exactly what you're going to get at the end of it. But part of it is just, walking by faith and saying, I think at the end of this, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be a better leader. And I know I'm going to have to, it isn't just going to happen. I'm going to have to put work into it. And as long as you have those expectations, you are going to come out being a better leader and a better person.
What did you think of the event, the first IMC you went to? What was your impression?
It was very intimidating because it is, one, so huge.
Yes.
The environment itself is just huge. I mean, it takes me 15 minutes to walk from my room to where the event is, and you're still in the same hotel. It's a long walk. And then having all those people, 3,000 people in the room, but they do a fantastic job of coordinating it and making it feel like you're really part of something. And what I love about, listening to John and some of the other folks, but specifically John, is he makes you feel like he's talking to you directly, right?
Every time.
It's me,
I'm
right?
like, oh, John. Every time I do, I feel that way, especially when he, calls us his friends. And I think that every time I've been there, I've walked out. You said reinvigorated earlier, and that's perfect, right? Like, just, I'm already enthusiastic about what I do. How could I get any more enthusiastic? But I am, every time I leave there, like, on a mission to make some change in what I'm doing to be more impactful, right? So, I don't go back as much as I used to. I have to be strategic about it because it's not cheap to even, this is beyond the certification to just pay to go back. You can go, twice a year?
Yes.
But to go back and have that experience is not cheap as well, but very valuable. So let's talk about the leadership principles that you learned through John and company. Are you laughing at my little arm
No,
thing?
no,
Oh,
no.
okay. You're laughing at the and company. Okay.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I really like how they give the information out, right? And how they make you feel like you're part of a family. It's a really big family, but part of a family. And a lot of the values from the military, from the Army, are the same ones that John has. You know, it's the integrity, it's the selfless service, it's personal courage. They call it, they use slightly different words, but they are very much the same. And those are things that resonate with me, because as a leader, you're going to have times when you're afraid.
Yeah.
You're going to, and you know, it's okay to be afraid. And courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving forward knowing that you're fearful.
Yeah.
That's where true courage is, because if you don't have fear, then there's nothing to be courageous about. It's having that fear in you and saying, I'm still going to move forward with this. I'm still going to go into this environment. I'm still going to try this new thing, even though I'm fearful of it. So those things really resonate with me. And there's a lot of similarities with what John teaches in the values and what the values are in the military.
Well, it was probably almost, I don't know if comforting's the word, but to see the parallel. Like, you received all this training before, and it's almost like the values that were instilled in you there carry through, and it makes you feel like a part of the family because those were already a part of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, when you're in a room full of people that share the same values as you do feel like family, in my opinion.
Yeah. And there are some differences. You know, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to things like John and what other mentors have really taught me, there's some things that you need in the corporate world that you don't need in the military world. You don't need influence in the military world, and in some cases you don't even want influence, because when you tell somebody to go do something, they just need to go do it. And no question, well, why do I need to do that? Right? In the military, that is unimportant. It's, you need to go do this and do it now, because if you don't, somebody could die. Lives are at stake. And you can't be spending your time trying to influence somebody to do something. It's, you go over here and you do it now, and that's the end of the story. In the corporate world, you can do that, but then you're really not a leader. You're more of a boss. You're just dictating what needs to happen. In the corporate world, you do want that influence. You want folks to feel like they're part of what's happening. They know what's going on, and even to the extent that you can, that they're part of that decisioning process.
Yeah, so when you said the difference between a boss and a leader, can you explain that for a second? What do you see as the difference between the two?
Yeah, so to me, a boss is somebody that just gives orders.
Okay.
Where a leader is somebody that, as you mentioned earlier, comes alongside you and says, here's what we're trying to do. This is why we're trying to do it. Are you on board?
Yeah.
And you try to have that influence with them. You try to have that ability to make them feel like they're part of something, not just, oh, this is an order I have to go do.
Yeah. So you started using the word influence when we started talking about John. So can you talk about why you started using the word influence, what John describes as leadership?
Yeah. I mean, he says, he makes it very clear, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I really agree with that. If you want the folks to be fully invested in what you're doing, they need to have that feeling of being included. And if they don't, they're not going to give it all.
Yeah. So that one statement from him is the whole reason that I started this podcast, right? Because I wanted people to understand that they're influencing others, and so they're a leader. you don't have to be sitting in a certain seat in the organization to be a leader and to be able to influence people. You can influence your family, right? Your
That's
friends, the person at the Dunkin' drive-thru, right? It doesn't matter where you are. So that was the whole purpose of this. So thank you, John, for that. Appreciate it. Out of curiosity, what is your favorite Maxwell book? I don't think I've asked you that before.
You have not. I would probably say it's Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. I think that's, I mean, there's so many that I really like of his. It's really hard to pick the favorite.
Yeah,
it's like saying
100 books.
Yeah, it's like saying, which one's your favorite child?
Yeah.
Because they're not all the same. They're focused on different areas. Yeah. And, but I think that one is really resonates with me because in order to be a good leader, you have to ask the right questions. Mm-hmm. You're not going to know everything that your folks know, and you shouldn't know everything that your folks know. But at sometimes you're going to have to make a decision, and those decisions can be really impactful. And so to ask the right questions the best you can to get some of the information you need to make the right decision is extremely important as a leader.
I like that one. No matter what book you said, I would have been like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Hopefully. I mean, there's plenty of them I still haven't read. Do you have all of them? Do you own all of them?
No, I don't.
I wonder how many people do. It's quite the investment.
Yep, it is.
The whole library. So if you could say what the greatest thing that you learned from John has been, what is that greatest lesson learned? I'm really making you think today.
It is. That's a great question.
I ask great questions.
You must be a great leader.
Thank you. I hear. No, I'm a good leader. Good leaders ask great questions.
So it's something that John has said, not necessarily in these exact words, but it's also something that one of my mentors did tell me in these exact words is, as to be a great leader, you need to genuinely and deeply care for people. That is the most important thing as a leader. People need to be felt cared about.
Mm-hmm. And that, again, goes everywhere with you.
Yes.
Right? Caring about everyone, complete strangers, people that aren't on your team at work.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the one thing John says that he does, and this is one thing that I do struggle with, is he sees everybody as a 10. Mm-hmm. Right? They're, everybody is perfect.
Yeah.
In
Don't be throwing that word around here. I have a lot of problems with that word.
But it's more just that having that concept and having that mindset, that perspective that people are here to do good and to be good, versus saying, oh, I know this person, I know their history, and they may not be fully upfront with you, or they might have underlying reasons that they're not telling you. They might be more mischievous. He says he doesn't do that, and I believe him.
Mm-hmm. Because he has integrity. Because he's integrous.
Yeah. But it is a hard thing to do, especially for the people you know the best, because you tend to focus on their downfalls, shortcomings, versus where they're good at it. It's hard.
No, that is a great lesson. I do remember him specifically saying that, like, put a 10 on their head or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And I literally am a visual person. So I look around and I'm like,
yeah, there's that Nickelback video. I forget which one it is. They got the timer of everybody said.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. It's like that, just with a number on it. Yeah.
Glad somebody knows.
Not that I listen to Nickelback, right? But
do you remember, because you listen to the episodes, Will Lawrence's episode, do you remember the things that he hates? Use the word hate to describe. One of them is Nickelback.
Oh, that's right.
So every time I
there
hear,
were like 3 things, weren't there?
3 things.
Yeah.
Oh man. This is like the Will quiz. Don't worry, he doesn't listen to these, so he doesn't know. I don't remember.
There was 2 bands, Nickelback and somebody else.
Yeah.
And then a third thing, I forget
Oh
now,
my
but
goodness.
yeah.
Okay, well, I failed that test. Anyway, so every time I see like Nickelback playing on the radio or something, I take a picture and send it to him. It's, yeah, kind of evil. Okay, so I love that. Greatest lesson learned from him. What about greatest lesson learned from the military?
There were a lot, a lot of lessons learned. And really, I think that the biggest thing, it was not through boot camp, but it was really through the RIP, the Ranger Indoctrination Program. It's only 3 weeks. It feels like you're going through it for 3 years. But again, their entire goal is to get you to quit. And they do everything they possibly can to make you quit.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah.
Like I need to visualize what actually happens.
So it's a lot of it is just around physical activity, doing stupid stuff, keeping you up constantly. When you first get there, as an example, now, and it's changed. I went through it back in 2003, so a few years ago.
When I graduated from high school.
At least you were born, I guess. That's a good. But so the first day you get there, they have you dump all your belongings, just dump it in a pile. And then they give you a certain amount of time to pack it back up, knowing well enough that nobody's going to do it in that amount of time. It's like 30 seconds. Right?
Okay.
And so you don't do it. Oh, great. We're going to do exercises for 15 minutes. Well, that goes on for about 8 hours. And you just have, and this is down in Georgia in the summer, where it's about 90 degrees. And you just have puddles of sweat everywhere. People are puking. And that's your first day of going through the Ranger Indoctrination Program.
Just day one.
Right.
That was the easy day.
Yeah. And what they also do is, I think it is day 3. You cannot quit until day 3.
They make you no matter what.
Right. You have to stay there for at least the 3 days.
Yeah. You could die, but it's okay.
So, yeah.
That's, I mean, to be completely honest, that's my biggest concern because, our bodies can only do so much sometimes.
Yep. But the point, I guess I completely got way off track.
Yeah. Biggest lesson learned. I'm sorry, where are we going with this?
It's that you are capable of so much more than you think.
There you go.
Even though when you feel that you're completely exhausted, there's still a lot left that you got inside of you. And if you take that to anything that you do and realize it's not going to be necessarily fun anymore, but I know I can do it further, you can really grow fast and achieve a lot of things and accomplish a lot of things if you have that mindset. Don't put those false ceilings on you, those false limitations, because that's really all they are. You can do much more than you're possible of. And going through RIP, that really kind of showed that just don't quit.
Yeah.
Nobody died. Did they have blisters and sores and all that? Sure. They did not feel well? Sure. Was it fun? No. But you made it through.
Yeah. I don't even know. I'm out of words. I can't imagine, but you have to feel so proud of yourself on the other side of it, right? Being able to survive that.
Especially when there's a small group, there was 22 of us that was standing on the other side of that whole experience and saying, you just didn't have to quit. And there's only 22 of us left. That's.
Wow. Okay. So that's a great lesson. Stamp of approval on that one. All right. Now, I know that a lot of learning takes place outside of the Maxwell program for you. I mean, I'm not even sure how much you still really tap into all the resources available to you in that program, because there are so many others out there, right? Just for example, Patrick Lencioni, I know you follow his stuff, Working Genius, and we already talked about that. But who are some other of your other go-to mentors when it comes to leadership? Where do you go for learning?
So a lot of it, and when you're talking about, I'll say published authors, published mentors,
Mm-hmm.
Simon Sinek, I think is huge. As you mentioned, Patrick Lencioni. There's Andy Stanley. I think he has some really good thoughts and ideas and messages. Of course, John Maxwell. There's a lot. But what I also do, and I call them my indirect mentors, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're people that I'm not interacting with directly, but they're impacting me through their books, through
Yeah.
their podcasts, through their YouTube videos, those types of things. I also have what I call direct mentors, and those are people like you, as an example. Because as we have conversations, I learn from you. And then I also seek out mentors of who is where I want to be in 5 years, 10 years. And I'll reach out to them and say, I'd love to just have a conversation. I don't say, hey, will you be my mentor? Because like, oh, wait, that
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of
Yeah, we
work. I
don't
don't have time.
recommend doing
Right?
that.
Yeah.
Don't ask.
It's more, can we have a conversation? I love to learn what you learned going through what you went through. How did you get where you were? And most of the time, they're more than willing to have that conversation. And generally, what happens at the end of the conversation, if you've done a good job, is they say, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out and we'll have another chat, which I always do. And so some of those folks, Glenn Strebe out at Air Academy, he's been a great mentor of mine. And there's been many other credit union CEOs, because that's what I wanted to be, and that's what I am now. And they've helped me get where I am. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them. And I still rely on them to say, okay, now I have the position. How do I become great in that position? But it's seeking out those folks that are great in their positions for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And it might be a very niche reason, or it might be a broad reason, and focusing on that. I would just recommend not picking a mentor that hasn't been there and done it before, because then you're just getting opinions. You're not getting experience and wisdom.
That's a good tip. I agree. So I'm like picturing you this combination of, okay, we've got the corporate world in the past, we have the military experience, Maxwell certification program, indirect mentors, and you're the CEO of a financial institution today. So I'm like picturing all that melded together, right, to make you who you are as a leader. So I'm not going to ask you to describe yourself as a leader. How do you think others would describe you as a leader? Do you feel like you're being interviewed today?
It's like I'm interviewing for a job.
I'm sorry, it's not supposed to feel that way. At first I was going to ask you, what do you think they'd say about you? Well, I mean, how would you describe yourself as a leader? But you have to know what people say about you.
Yeah, I think that it's really that I care. And it feels weird for me saying that, that this is what I think other people think. But that's what they've said. When I took this position as the CEO, the folks that I was leading at the previous job, they said, just do what you do with us and you're going to be successful. And really what I was doing was sitting down and listening to them, listening to what their concerns were. And that was one of the first things I did at Bronco when I came in, was sit down and I sat with each board member individually. I sat with all the departments as groups, and then I also sat down with each employee individually, each of the 55, and just listened to what was on their mind, what concerns or issues did they have. What did they want to be when they grew up? And that always gets people kind of chuckling of, and some folks, they were probably close to retirement, but it's still the case of what do you want to be, and how can we help you get there? When you ask them those questions, hopefully it makes them feel like you care, because I do. I want people to be successful, and if that is at Bronco in this case, or if it's us helping them get somewhere else other than Bronco, fantastic. Let's help them be successful wherever that is. And I think if you do that as a leader in general, people are going to really appreciate that, and they're going to give you all of their effort that they can.
Yeah. That was a really good answer, especially having not rehearsed it in advance. I can tell that you care. I know that you authentically care about your people and people in general. So I'm sure that that's what they would say too. I would say that about you. So I'm curious. I always want to think about how any listener, no matter where they are in their life, how they can apply what we're talking about today. So I want to kind of pull back big picture for a second and think about how this conversation applies to anyone and everyone. What key insights do you have that you can share that anybody can really take and put something into action to improve the way they're even leading themselves, not even leading others, but how they're leading themselves? What advice do you have?
On how they can become better, or how they can get started, or
Hey,
all of
we don't
it.
know where they are, right?
Yeah, and if it's how you can get started, I think it's looking at your daily agenda and saying, what am I doing today? And if I want to be a leader, what things am I doing that are leader-ish? That's a word.
Leaderish.
Right?
We're doing that today.
What things are similar to leading, even though I may not have a leadership position, but it doesn't mean that you're not a leader. Again, to me, you don't determine if you're a leader. The people
Right.
following you are the ones that will determine if you're a leader. And that can be with a group of friends. It can be at church. It can be at work. It can be at home with your kids.
Yeah.
As a parent, you're a leader to your children as well. And there's times when you need to be a leader to your spouse, not in a negative way. They might need help, right? They might be struggling, and you're figuring out, okay, how do we help this person get to where they want to be, which is not where they are today and struggling. So really it is looking at your daily agenda and seeing how can you do leadership stuff in your daily agenda. If you want to learn more about leadership, how to become a better leader, it's looking into the different programs that are available. And there's a ton of information out there. You don't have to go through the certification that you and I went through. It's watching YouTube videos. There's thousands of YouTube videos out there on leadership.
Yeah.
It's finding what resonates with you and the type of leader that you want to be, and finding who that is, and then starting to follow that person and learn about that first person. There is so much free information out there nowadays.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend any money. It's looking at websites, it's listening to podcasts, it's watching their YouTube videos. That's how you can learn to be a better leader.
That's great advice on both sides there. And I was just thinking about the fact, kind of merging those two ideas together of it's in your daily agenda and all of these opportunities. I feel like I hear from people all the time, I don't have enough time to do blank. And I will forever say that if it's important to you, you'll make time for it, right? So if it's important to you and you want to grow in this area, you can listen to it in the shower. Like, there are so many times during the day where you're doing mindless activities and your brain's pre-programmed to do it. Use those opportunities to learn and grow. I mean, when I'm commuting, I'm trying to make the most of it every single time. I might stop and send you a video, right? If you're lucky that day, because some days I do it and I'm like, yeah, I've got too much to do on the way to and from, right? Because I feel like that's my opportunity to learn. Or like you said, getting up earlier in the morning before anybody else gets up. That's my favorite time too. I don't do 4 though. I do 5. I can't do 4. I can do 4. I choose not to.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But anyway, that quiet time, just get up a little bit earlier. People can spend, even if it's 15 minutes a day, think about how much you grow over the course of a year, right? So I love that you shared both of those, but I'm going to make this the challenge. Merge them together, and I encourage people to find one spot in their day where they could start infusing some of these concepts in and begin learning and talking about it with others and finding a mentor, right?
Yeah.
I think we just created a challenge.
Great. That's fantastic.
You didn't even have to do it. So, no, thank you. That was helpful. All right. Anything that you feel you've kind of had to leave behind that you needed to unlearn? Maybe something that you realized you were doing as a leader that wasn't very effective. Not that it was specifically taught to you. Maybe it was modeled for you at some point, right? And you learned it from someone who was ineffective and you had to unlearn a behavior. But is there anything that you've kind of had to leave behind?
Yeah, and that's that not caring part, the being a boss versus it's in the military, right, it's very, you're going to dictate what somebody says or what somebody does.
Mm-hmm.
And generally they're not going to question you.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to question you. And if they do, you come down on them usually pretty hard so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Again, lives are at stake. I understand that leadership concept in the military. But that does not work in the corporate world. And I do feel that a lot of people that are transitioning out of the military, that is something they struggle with. Especially, I was in for 4 years and had to unlearn that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine being in for 20, 25 years and then transitioning to the corporate world and having to unlearn that much of a time frame of being in that kind of environment. That's got to be very hard for folks.
Well, I do think about that transition back to even just civilian life, not even to a leadership role, but to civilian life, how that's a transition in itself. And then to take it a step further to where you're now leading other people, they're looking to you as a model, and you're having to kind of reprogram yourself and realize that that's not going to serve you in this environment. That has to be challenging.
Yeah. What a lot of folks don't realize is when you go to serve and protect the freedoms of the American people, you generally are giving up your freedoms of the American people by being in the military. There's a lot of freedoms that are given up, and it varies by unit, but usually in the special operations units, you give up the most. So if you wanted to have a few days off, that was not happening. Everybody took leave the same time, and you had no options otherwise.
Wow.
So that is something that I respect a lot of the folks, especially the ones that stay in for 10, 15, 20 plus years. They're giving up their freedoms so that we can have ours.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your service. I know I said it earlier, but I can't thank you enough. And I appreciate you kind of sharing those insights. If someone is listening that is a veteran, and they are trying to kind of get incorporated into the corporate world, go out into business for the first time, do you have any tips or strategies for that transition?
So there are platforms out there to help people transition. One is called Veterati. VETAR no, I messed it up.
We have to write
Google,
it down.
Google Veterati. And it's a free mentoring program.
It's VETERATI.
Okay.
Thank you to Matt.
Yes. Yeah. I'm in the finance world, not the spelling world. So
Well, when you said VETAR, I was like, I'm starting to question if I spell veteran right.
No, no.
Okay, so veterati, what is
So
that?
that is a mentoring program for veterans transitioning out of the military. They pair you up with somebody that's already out of the military,
Okay.
and they just connect you, and you just have a mentoring session over the phone,
Wow.
and they tell you, this is what I want to do, these are my struggles, and you help them through that.
That's
So
great. That's great.
it's
There's
it's a
another
great
one.
resource.
Oh, okay. They say vets to industry. It's the same thing. I see. Um, awesome. That's a great resource. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else that you want to share about your leadership journey?
No, no, it's been a great journey, and I'm looking forward to many more years of learning and growing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to continuing to learn from you. So keep learning
Oh,
so you have things to share with me. Thanks again for coming.
thank you for having me.
Appreciate you. All right, friends. Well, we've reached the end of another episode. Thanks for sticking with us. If you found value, please share this with others. We would love it if you would subscribe so that you receive a notification when our new episodes drop every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, keep branching out.